It's all your fault. At my sister's wedding, I, the younger sibling, suddenly found myself being scolded by my sister, who was the day's star. She had just had beer poured over her head out of nowhere. The most baffling part was the person who had poured the beer was my husband, who, until a moment ago, was seated right next to me. Confused and frozen in place, I was in for a shocking revelation. My name is Samantha, a 28-year-old office worker. 3 years ago, I married my husband George, and we've been living together ever since. We're starting to seriously consider having kids, but I believe that's something we have to decide as a couple, and something to be blessed with. On top of that, George seems to be busy with work lately, coming home late every night. Even when he comes home late at night, he goes straight to bed, saying he's tired. This kind of life has been going on for about half a year now. I can't help but sigh naturally, as it feels like we've become a mature couple that's lost its spark. George has been acting differently lately. He feels like a completely different person from the man I know. He used to be known as a doting husband. Since we started dating, he has given me flowers and gifts every year on my birthday. He's a very diligent and sincere person. This quality is also reflected in his work, as he was chosen to be the department head of a newly established department at the company where he works. George's company is filled with young employees. The president of George's company is a young man who runs several businesses and is known to be very capable. He doesn't show his face to his employees usually, insisting on equality, and occasionally sneaks into the company to check things out. Sounds like an interesting company. Yeah, isn't it? That's why neither I nor my colleagues have ever seen the president's face. He seems to be about our age, which is pretty amazing, George said. The company is a major one in our hometown, so we could live on George's salary alone. But since we don't have children yet, I'm continuing to work. Then one day, oh, by the way, a new employee joined today, and it was a big surprise. It was your sister Mary. What? My sister? At George's words, I was surprised and also felt a bit unpleasant. I have an older sister named Mary, who is 2 years older than me, but to be honest, I've hated her since we were children. Mary seems to be the type who isn't satisfied unless she's the center of attention, and she's done things that I hate since we were children. In TV shows and comics, you often see scenes where a kinder older sister gives something to her younger sister, but I can't relate to that at all. For example, there was a time when our uncle gave us handkerchiefs of different colors. The handkerchiefs were cute, one pink and one yellow. Mary liked pink. I liked yellow, so naturally, I thought Mary would choose the pink one, but she said, I want the yellow one. My uncle, knowing that Mary liked pink, said, Oh, you're okay with not having the pink one? Yeah. Look, Samantha, isn't it nice? She showed me with a smirk. From a young age, I had been living such a life, so I accepted the remaining pink handkerchief. But the next day, my sister said, You know what? I prefer pink after all. Let's swap. Samantha, you like yellow, don't you? She switched out her filthy, crumpled handkerchief for the one I'd carefully kept clean, without my permission. Our parents scolded her. Hey, Mary, what are you doing acting on your own again? No, it wasn't me. Samantha said she wanted to trade. Mary has always been one to easily lie. Our parents were constantly dealing with my sister's troublesome behavior, but they poured out their love equally into both of us. As Mary grew up, her problematic character got worse. When I introduced my boyfriends to her in our student days, they would often suddenly break up with me shortly afterwards. At first, I didn't understand why, but everything clicked when I saw her flauntingly holding hands with my ex-boyfriend on our way home from school. Unlike me, who was rather reserved, Mary was stunningly beautiful and flashy. Her character might have been the worst, but she was quite the looker, fooling many people. Mary's obsession with me was abnormal, but I guess that's because she hated me just as much as I hated her. From then on, I stopped introducing my boyfriends to her. Even now, Mary remains single, but she's always got some high-flying boyfriend by her side. At our wedding, she showed absolutely no interest in my then unemployed husband and even smirked, saying, He suits you just fine. Then, Mary suddenly showed up at my husband's company. What made matters worse was a call coming from my mother saying, That girl seems to have broken up with her boyfriend again. I wonder when she's going to settle down. I thought to myself, no way, she wouldn't go after a married man, let alone my husband. And I started feeling anxious. But looking back, my husband started coming home late around the same time that Mary joined his company. While I was going through these anxious days, an event happened that cleared up all my worries. It was a call from Mary. Hey, it's been a while, hasn't it, Samantha? Yeah, it has been. What's up, Mary? Well, I'm getting married, and I really want you and your husband to come. Wow, that's great. Congratulations. But aren't we going to have a meeting with the groom's family first? I asked, to which she replied, we just don't have the time. I'm actually pregnant. Oh, congratulations. Sorry for getting pregnant so suddenly. Mary laughed. I wasn't sure why she apologized to me. Honestly, I was pretty upset, but I didn't want to show it, so I just said, "I'm looking forward to it," and ended the call. Even after hanging up, I remained upset for a while, but then I thought, if she's getting married, that means nothing happened with George, and I was worried for nothing, and I felt relieved. That night, when my husband came home unusually early, I said, "I got an interesting call today and some big news." "Oh, really? Who was it from?" he asked indifferently, as always. "Well, it was Mary. She's getting married." The moment I said that, he exclaimed, "What?" I was taken aback by his strong reaction, but I figured he was just surprised since they worked at the same company. "Oh, Mary is, sorry. I'm just really tired today. I'm going to bed early. Good night." He swiftly headed off to the bedroom as usual. Passing by our bedroom one evening, it seemed that my husband George was on the phone with someone. He sounded a bit emotional, but I figured it was a work call, so I didn't pay much mind to it. At that time, I didn't notice that George nonchalantly addressed my sister without any formalities. That's how much I trusted him. Then came Mary's wedding day the following month. Ever since that day, George had been constantly grouchy. "Hey, could you at least stop with the sour face today? It's disrespectful considering it's a wedding." "All right, I got it," he replied. In the bridal room, Mary, dressed in a pure white gown, looked radiant. Much to my chagrin, she was indeed beautiful. "Congratulations, Mary. Your dress is gorgeous," I said, to which she replied, "Look forward to my cocktail dress for the reception, too." It was my first time meeting Mary's fiancé. He seemed like a nice guy, and he was an employee at a company within our business circle. I hate to admit it, but for Mary, who usually dates high-profile men, he seemed a bit unusual. However, the reason became clear later. His rural parents own a lot of land and are loaded. "I hit the jackpot," Mary whispered to me, grinning triumphantly. It wasn't of much interest to me, so I simply responded with, "Wow, impressive." At my lackluster reaction, Mary's face fell a bit, but she soon smirked and said, "Well, enjoy. You too, George." Catching George's face from the corner of my eye, I noticed an expression of sadness, regret, something I couldn't quite put into words. When I asked him later, "Did something happen with you and Mary at work?" he responded curtly and somewhat angrily, "Huh? Why? It's none of your business." After that, the ceremony went on smoothly until Mary returned from her dress change. As I was musing about her new outfit color, could it be her favorite pink? The entrance door swung wide open. In that instant, I couldn't help but utter, "Huh." My sister's dress was my favorite shade of yellow. Of course, at my wedding, I wore my beloved yellow dress. Furthermore, the dress my sister wore more closely resembled mine from that time. "Hey, doesn't Mary's dress look just like mine?" I asked George. There was no response. Was he drunk? His gaze, however, was firmly fixed on Mary. "By the way, Mary's pregnant. Do you think she's all right?" I asked. George, who had been lost in thought until now, looked surprised and said, "Oh, she's pregnant." After a while, I left to use the restroom. On my return, there was a commotion in the hall. Everyone was looking at the main table where Mary was sitting. She was pregnant. Could something have happened? As I hurried toward the table, I was met with an astonishing sight. There was Mary, covered head to toe in beer, her beautiful dress and hair soaking wet, and standing next to her, holding a glass of beer, was George, my husband. But Mary yelled at me, not George. "This is all your fault. You should just disappear." "What? Why?" I responded. Everyone in the hall was confused and panicking. Cutting through the chaos, George yelled, "Pregnant? What do you mean? I didn't know about this, Mary." I was taken aback. Why was George so involved with Mary's pregnancy? But then Mary's next words made everything clear. "George, have you finally decided to take this seriously?" "Wait, what? Mary and George? Why?" I blurted out, only to be told by my husband, "Keep your mouth shut if you don't have a clue." If I'm irrelevant, what does that make us? As I was thinking this, my father's open hand flew towards my sister. "Are you still behaving like this? This is shameful." The wedding was now out of the question. The ceremony was immediately called off, and some of the guests left, obviously displeased. In the dressing room, my husband and I, my sister and the groom, and both our parents, were present. Despite what had happened, my sister was unapologetic, clinging tightly to my husband's side. "When did you two start having this relationship?" I asked. To which she replied, "Just now noticed, huh? Probably not long after George joined the company." I felt a wave of darkness overwhelm me. My hunch had been right all along. My sister, who could never keep a boyfriend, was jealous of me, a woman with a successful husband. "So I should just take him from you?" she must have thought. She had heard from our parents about my husband's company and his position. In the beginning, they were just in-law siblings, but my sister started to invite my husband out under the pretext of work-related issues, and then they began to go out for meals and drinks alone. They became conscious of each other, and my husband confessed his feelings, and they started dating, he told me. The fact that my husband initiated the relationship was the hardest part for me. It seems he was even pushing for a divorce from me, hoping that by marrying another man, he would be forced to turn back. The idea of my sister having a relationship with another man for this reason was disgusting, and my husband's defense of her was even more disgusting. The yellow dress she wore seemed to be another form of harassment. Being doused with beer was unexpected, but it shows how serious I was, right? Now George is finally mine. Sorry, Samantha. She giggled. My father was about to hit her again, but my mother stopped him because she was pregnant. I felt the same way. The unborn child was innocent. I asked a question that had been on my mind. Hey, who's the father of the child in your belly? Of course it's George, my sister said to me with a triumphant look. I was honestly surprised. My sister had easily conceived a child with a man who had never been able to impregnate me. Oh, is that so? Can I go home now? I don't ever want to see your faces again. As I said this, may I also go home? It's nothing but unpleasantness here. Expect to hear from my lawyer soon. The groom, who had been silent until now, spoke up. At this, my husband sneered. I'll pay for whatever you want in damages because Mary is going to be with me. If you get it, get lost. Realizing that the groom was beneath him, my husband looked down on him completely. Is that so? The groom smiled and left with his parents. His smile was a little scary. A few days later, my divorce from my husband was easily finalized. With favorable terms for me, a lump sum of alimony was transferred to me. They probably wanted to be together as soon as possible, regardless of the cost. Despite being a husband who cared about societal appearances, it seemed like he'd painted me as the villain at his workplace, spinning a charming tale of my sister, his sister-in-law, standing by his side through it all. And brazenly, they continued to work together. To outsiders, they probably seemed like a happy couple, but I knew it wouldn't last. A few months later, my sister called me. I hesitated to pick up, but the relentless ringing of the phone got on my nerves. When I finally answered, she yelled, "You! This isn't what we agreed on." "What? What are you talking about?" I responded. "George's debts," my sister exclaimed, having apparently just caught on. "Oh, really? That's tough," I provoked. Then she fired back. "Don't joke around. It's the debt you made. You won't get away with it." "What? Debt I made? What's that about?" My sister was too frantic for a productive conversation, so we decided to talk another day. I promptly reached out to a particular individual. He agreed to accompany me with glee. Time to plunge them into hell had arrived. A week later, I headed to our meeting place with this individual. Upon their arrival, my sister and her husband were more shocked by the person seated next to me than by my presence. The person I had contacted was none other than Mary's ex-fiancé, John. "Why is John here? But you two losers do make a good pair." "Anyway, Samantha, I'll never forgive you," she declared. I was taken aback, but I knew that I wouldn't get any closure without confronting the matter. I asked, "So about this debt you're saying I made, what exactly are you referring to?" "That debt you racked up because you wanted to splurge," she replied, and turned to George for confirmation. "Oh, really? Hey, George, my silly sister Mary is so gullible she'd believe anything she's told. It's sad, so I'll enlighten her with the truth." "What do you mean?" Mary snapped. I decided to share a fact that she was unaware of. Could it be from gambling on the slot machines? At this, George looked at me as if to say, "Why would you bring that up?" The truth is, when we got married, his parents told me something. Before George and I started dating, he was a gambling addict, particularly hooked on slot machines. He had even accumulated debt and, unable to manage it himself, had run to his parents for help. He seemed to have fully recovered under their strict guidance, but there were signs of relapse after he was promoted at work. One such sign was his refusal to show me his credit card statements. Suspicious, I rummaged through his room when he wasn't home and found not only notices from credit card companies, but also collection letters from loan companies. I found them a week before our wedding. George might have had his own frustrations with work, his relationship with Mary, or even me. These could have stacked up, pushing him towards his old habit as an outlet for stress. By the time I found out, he had amassed a significant amount. Moreover, it seemed like the money he paid to us as alimony was from debt he incurred, covering Mary's share too. It was likely that the money was borrowed. Merely imagining the total amount of debt gave me the shivers. "No way." My sister kept murmuring that this wasn't supposed to happen, but the conversation continued. Well, you're a division manager. If you quit gambling and work seriously, you'll pay off the debt in no time, I said. My ex-husband, looking triumphant, responded, Yeah, that's right. Mary, it's going to be fine. While he said that, my sister's face was all contorted. But what happens if you lose your job? The one who spoke up was John. What? What's it to you? Stay out of it if you're not involved. It does concern me. I'm a party to this. Granted, I don't know much about Mary since we haven't known each other long. Apparently, my sister and John met at their favorite bar, and maybe due to the alcohol, they hit it off, and the next thing they knew, they were sleeping in the same bed. But John was fully clothed, and when my sister later contacted him saying she was pregnant, he acted like a gentleman and decided to marry her. But then another man shows up, claiming the baby is his? I can't make heads or tails of this. I can't make heads or tails of it. Even though he spoke calmly, I could tell he was furious. To be honest, it could have been anyone. Don't worry, nothing happened. But because you happened to be nearby at the time, I just used you, my sister replied, laughing. Next to her, my husband was also grinning. These two are the scum of the earth, refreshing in their audacity. I couldn't stand sharing the same air with them. So I said one thing to John. Isn't it about time, boss? Both of them looked taken aback. Boss, huh? You don't have to pretend. It's probably some small, unheard-of company, right? My ex-husband mocked. When he said that, John passed him a business card. Whether you've heard of it, I don't know, but I do have a business card right here. When he took the card, he was smirking, but his face quickly turned pale. My sister, seeming to sense something was off, quietly asked my ex-husband, Is he someone famous? You don't even know the name of the president of your own company? You really are hopeless, he said to my sister. Upon hearing this, my sister let out a loud shout that echoed throughout the place. The president? I found out about this 2 weeks after the divorce. At the advertising agency where I work, there was a plan to interview the president of a local company, and it turned out to be John. We were both really surprised when we saw each other. He had kept everything hidden about my sister because she was an employee at his company, intending to reveal everything after the wedding. Both their faces turned pale. Ignoring their reactions, John continued speaking. I don't judge my employees based on their private lives. However, I've been getting numerous complaints about the two of you. I think I can guess why. Apparently, ever since my sister joined the company, my ex-husband, under the pretense of field work, was often slacking off with her. My sister herself, brandishing the shield of being a manager, seemed to be throwing her weight around despite being a newbie at work. Naturally, performance suffered and the atmosphere in George's department was utterly dreadful. I'll be in touch about the disciplinary measures. Excuse me, John said as he left. It's all your fault, my sister screamed, which could best be described as bitter resentment. Stop yelling, it'll affect that big belly of yours. Not sure whose child it is, though, I said. At that, George, who had been in a state of shock, lunged at my sister and yelled, What are you talking about? Stop it. Don't attack a pregnant woman. And aren't you well aware that it might not be your child? When I said that, George looked frustrated, while my sister looked a little panicked. We never had a child. We just couldn't. The problem wasn't with me. It was with George. We had tried for a child and gone for tests. It turned out that George had a significantly low sperm count. The doctor suggested other methods and recommended treatment, but George wouldn't accept the result, refusing to move on to the next step. I waited for him to come around, but that day never came. When George found out about my sister's pregnancy, he was ecstatic, thinking, It was a lie, I can have a child. But when she spitefully held a wedding, he was honestly angry and reportedly doused my sister in beer from head to toe. The two of them are absolutely insane. So whose child is it? A fight erupted right in front of me, but I didn't care, so I said, I think things are going to get tough from here, but I have nothing to do with it. I'm leaving. Goodbye. And I left the bar. Even after that, the two of them were still squabbling loudly. Sometime later, my sister gave birth. It turned out the child wasn't George's, but the child of a coworker, a subordinate of George. My sister thought it was a fling, but it seemed the man was serious. He didn't trust her with the child, so he took custody. I thought that was for the best. And sure enough, my sister didn't resist. She didn't show any interest in the newborn and seemed to be avoiding touching it more than necessary. She had been planning to have any man's child since she thought being with a high-spec man like George would allow her to lead a wealthy life. I'm horrified. Even though she is my sister, I don't even consider her my sister anymore. Rumors spread about the real reason for George and my sister's divorce, and how they got together. Both of them were slated to be transferred to different departments and George was going to be demoted, but both felt uncomfortable and quit their jobs. They seemed to believe they would easily find new jobs, but that didn't work out. Many local business owners, whom John had invited, attended the wedding and seemed displeased with George and my sister. They were infamous, and it's unlikely they'll ever get a decent job in town again. Still, their debts aren't decreasing. We later found out that George had made my sister a co-signer and borrowed money from unsavory sources. There was a lot of initial strife, but my sister, who had always relied on men, still seemed to be with him. In a way, they deserve each other. Both tried to ask their respective parents for money but were turned away. They work from dawn till dusk, doing temporary or part-time jobs, but life seems tough. They brought it on themselves. I hope they have a hard time. As for me, I've met someone at work and we've decided to tie the knot. Happily, we're also expecting our first child. I've had my fair share of struggles, but right now, I'm the happiest I've ever been.